My name is Kendrick. I'm the CEO of Omnilytics. My specialty is focused more on the back-end side of it, more the artificial intelligence side. I'm hoping Kevin and Gary can complement a lot more in terms of how we're supposed to answer the question, how we're supposed to look into taxonomies within different applications and use cases.
Awesome.
What do you, Gary?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gary Jackson. I'm Executive Director for Qualex for Innovation and Learning. I'm really excited about this, basically this conference. Even though the time zone's a little different from me, I had to get up like at 3:30 in the morning to do this. So I apologize if I'm a little bit draggy, but very, very excited about talking how AI can change the entire fashion industry, especially around taxonomy. So very excited about this conference.
Awesome, cool. Thanks, everyone. So for today's session, or this discussion specifically, will be centered around the idea of using taxonomy and the balance with it in AI. So let me just start off the first question that will start off the entire session. So the first question is directed towards Kendrick. What are the major differences between a company who does thorough taxonomy and a company who does basic taxonomy?
I think this question is it can be summed up from the previous panels we had, from the previous speakers we had, which is that it allows you to three differences. The first difference is that the in-depth understanding of your own products, of what you're selling, of what what your customers are looking to purchase. The second one is the ability to go very in-depth towards your marketing, to understand how to segment your audience and segment the products to showcase to your audience, and to change that 1x ROAS to 14x or 12x ROAS, for what Vivek mentioned. And the third one is to look into doing any form of benchmarking within the industry. So the greater your taxonomies, the greater your synonyms or taxonomies across different brands, the better you're able to benchmark yourself against a competitor within the industry. Those three are the biggest sums up between the difference between having a very deep level taxonomy, understanding it, how to apply it within your organization, and those that takes a more laid-back approach towards it.
All right, I think that is a very good recap of essentially why taxonomy is pretty important, especially if it's as thorough as possible. But moving on to the next question, right? So when we understand that artificial intelligence has become a core component when it comes to taxonomy and its development, maybe perhaps, Kevin, you can explain a little bit on how taxonomy has developed over the years and what can we expect it in the future? Kevin, you okay?
Sorry, I thought you were mentioning with Gary. So yeah, I think taxonomy would be very important because I mean, come to think of it, I mean, if you look back, I mean, why taxonomy is such a trend right now? I think you can see that it's because more customers are expecting better convenience, better shopping experience. And I think together with the increase in demand for better experience in shopping, I think it's also taxonomy has become much more important right now because, as you all know, e-commerce is growing, and I think specifically, I think an example for China, I think, in 2024 they're forecasting to e-com to make approximately around 60% of the retail sales. So I mean, if you look back like 5 years, 10 years ago, I mean, when you're shopping for fashion items like apparel, clothing, I mean, you shop via offline, right? And if you look for something, like if you look for a pair of jeans, if you're looking for a specific color of a shirt, I mean, you have a store personnel that you can ask to, like, where is this item? Do you have this kind of size? Do you have this kind of apparel with this kind of button, etc., etc. Right now, I mean, with more customers becoming more in depth on using online to purchase for fashion items, I mean, that makes taxonomy even more important. So yeah, I think it's both the increase in, I mean, if you look back, I mean, why are we doing taxonomy? Why are we categorizing these kind of items on a specific categories? Because we want our products to be accessible, to be searchable, right? And I mean, the searchability is all part of giving better customer experience in terms of shopping. So I think it's the increase in demand for convenience, and it's an increase in trend of the shift to the e-commerce. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that same question, right? Based on what you've already said, what can we expect in the near future when it comes to taxonomy, as in how will it probably develop and innovate further?
I think taxonomy, like in our case, I mean, we have applied a basic taxonomy current this moment. I mean, we studied what kind of categories are usually working. We study on a more granular level. So I think in the near future, no, with the development of AI, with all the digital transformation and everything, I think we can expect fashion to become more detailed. When I say more detail, I mean right now I think we can see a little, I mean, quote unquote, a taste of it already. Right, more brands are becoming more data driven, and I think taxonomy is a subset of the digital transformation. And I believe we're gonna have more data. Customer would be much smarter, and at the same time, businesses, brands would become much smarter and more accurate in targeting their customers.
That's amazing. I would definitely look forward to a society where we have innovated those ends completely. Maybe the next question, heading this directly towards Gary. So Gary, in this new age, data is essentially everything, right? And especially when making decisions, what is so crucial, and no, but specifically, why is it so crucial that we have taxonomic data to make better decisions?
I think one of the most important things is being able to direct, your customers to what they're really looking for. Right now we're just basically searching for products, but we have to. I think there was a speaker that was before that was talking about you have to make an emotional connection, and the only way you can make an emotional connection with a customer to get them really to engage is you have to find the language that they speak. Context means everything. So the deeper and broader your taxonomy is, the more categories you bring in, the more information that you kind of scrape in to be able to kind of direct them, you can satisfy those emotional needs. And I think I think sometimes we forget that. We use a lot of technology to kind of point at things, but we're never trying to use, especially when you're talking about artificial intelligence, you have to make sure that you're bringing concepts in that tug at their heartstrings. And that's the way you can sell product.
Thank you. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more on what being empathetic to your customers would mean and what that would result into.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I always tell everybody is artificial intelligence isn't for everybody. You have to have an emotional intelligence to create artificial intelligence. You are building an empathy engine. So you can think about all the technologies and everything that you're doing, but you have to make sure that you're getting the people that you're trying to target. And you also have to be considerate of the culture, the language, all of the things you're kind of reaching out to. But you have to have an emotional IQ. And one of the reasons why I say that is a lot of people get a little worried. If we use too much AI around this, then we lose humanity. I believe it's the opposite. If you don't use AI, you're going to lose your humanity. For example, I mean, one of the things I always tell people, if you're afraid to use AI, Luke Skywalker was never afraid to use R2-D2. R2-D2 never tried to become a Jedi Knight. Basically, Luke Skywalker, R2-D2 had one function, did it very, very, very well, and was able to help. I'm sorry, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Luke Skywalker do what he needed to do. And that's what we really need to think about when we talk about artificial intelligence. It really needs to be one of those things where you're trying to connect with your customers. But you also have to, there's one thing that I am very passionate about is you also got to be careful not to be a stalker. So I do understand that sometimes you want to do predictive and you want to kind of point people towards stuff maybe before they think of it. But you have to be careful that you're not stalking them. And what do I mean by that? One of the jokes I always say is, what's the difference between a stalker and a friend? A stalker knows your birthday. And so you have to make sure that you suggest, whisper in their ear, tug at their heartstrings, but not know too much about them. Right now, as we're doing this conference, you're asking us all three of us questions. Slowly, we're kind of releasing, what we know. And there's a relationship that's built back and forward. And that's kind of how your taxonomy system should work. You're gathering things, you're suggesting things for them to go down, and you're using categories, but they also should be able to suggest things going forward, and it's a backwards and forwards place. And that teaches your AI to be more human-like, or to make it more an empathy engine.
I think that's really cool. That is, for something that's fairly technical, that's a very philosophical approach, understanding that something being technical is not necessarily something that is bad, and we can achieve more humanity by incorporating all these different elements into our daily lives. That's quite amazing. So the next question is actually for Kendrick. So perhaps you already talked about this in your session earlier, but for those brands and businesses who have not used taxonomy before, or at least to a large scale, how does the application process look like when using taxonomic data to make data-driven decisions?
So is that in regards to how did you start applying it first, or how did they utilize it once they've applied it?
It can be both, yeah.
Okay, so if we're talking about the former, right, how do we even apply it, right, within the organization? The very beginning, it depends upon the number of skills and the capacity we have in-house. We have the capacity to do it in-house, let's say is sub 100 skills. Then we nominate someone who we determine as a taxonomy expert within this organization. And we ask them to classify the any items that we get. Even if we be a bit more in depth around this, right? If we can get the designer or the product designer to provide the deeper level taxonomies during the development stage, designing phase, before it even reaches the buyers and the merchandisers within the organization, that would be ideal. But that puts a heavy reliance upon a single individual or a team or a certain set of teams in the organization, and that has a very bad fallback mechanism. But it's a good way to start. It's a very good way to start. If let's say you get to more than 100 skills, that is where it gets a bit more complex, because instead of going into a small team, right, that is utilized to create these kind of certain taxonomies within the organization that is already standardized, you have to train additional people to understand the current team's mentality, how they have previously classified the items, which leads to more human error. The more people we have to train, right, the more we're likely to get something wrong. So as we start developing greater taxonomies within the organization, right, we start having more of a human error approach, whereby we have to disseminate our knowledge and get new team members to understand how have we previously classified our items. Now, another way to look through this, right, to think about this, is simply saying, hey, from the taxonomies that we have historically built within our organization, which of these are we able to do some basic training models upon? And maybe if we have enough historical data, 10 years previously, for example, maybe we can build some kind of a basic model system over there. Maybe we don't have a team in place, then we look towards companies that provide taxonomies that's really been built. But now there's another challenge, right? The other challenge is that if you're going to an organization that say, hey, guy, implement your taxonomies within our organization, the taxonomies that they have will most likely be something different from what you have historically been building in-house, which means that you have to build links back to each other, which means that let's say that I historically have called this, let's just say a down jacket, and you call it a down coat, then we have to build that linkage tree together, which again is quite a simple process. It's a one-off process. You do it once, you're done. But you have to take into account these kind of things as you think about expanding the taxonomies and becoming more advanced, because it's not just a plug and play method. Now, the moment you have this implemented, right? So let's now say that the moment that you have designed the products, you send the products away to this other company or to anyone else or to a team of experts, then you have reclassified the products. And that is where, that is how you get to scale. Basically, you have to be able to find a way to basically take your products, any products that comes into any products that you're creating, automatically tag the products and returns it back to you. And then you say, hey, these are not taxonomies, or hey, I want something deeper, or hey, I want a different classification around it based upon what we've historically utilized. That is when you start getting to scale. And that is when you can start getting a lot more in depth to the own products that you're just selling, or the products that your customers want to search. Different way to think about this as well is that adding more taxonomies to the products, right, isn't just about helping your own organization. It's about just helping your customers. Simply put, now that everyone has moved towards e-com, right, or every single brand is like pushing e-com very heavily. E-com is not something where you're surrounded by just the local population around you. Anyone around the world can buy your products, which means everyone comes with their own different way of thinking around the product, classifying the products. So if the site itself, right, is only has one certain classification, then the customers would not be able to find the products if they are from a, if they think about the product in a different language, or they think of the product in a different manner. Again, duvet coat, duvet jacket. That's an example over there.
Thank you. I think that was a fairly decent recap of essentially what taxonomy is and how we can essentially apply it. I think that a lot of small businesses would definitely find this quite useful. But to that extent, right, when we also talk about small businesses, we also have to talk about these data companies. So a lot of data companies often appeal to larger and multinational entities rather than smaller businesses. So your small businesses, your uncles and aunties who want to sell clothes probably won't use taxonomy and probably wouldn't have access to the data to begin with. So this question is actually directed towards Gary. With the usage of taxonomy, how can small businesses get started to use taxonomy as part of their day-to-day processes?
Well, one of the things that I try to tell people to do is you don't have to be big to act big. It's very important to note that. And I think normally what I try to tell a small business, it's a team of people that you can bring in. I teach data science, and I teach a lot of, the NLP, natural language processing, and those type of things. I would always encourage them to go to the universities and look for interns to just get something started, because if they can't afford the data, but they want to get into this world, they can actually go out and put up opportunities for an intern or two to come in to basically to start doing this work and to give them milestones. And it's kind of hard, right? The first thing that I always tell people is not just try to find a coder that's a developer or someone that's doing data science to start to do the work. I also ask them to go out there and try to go to the School of Art and Design and basically to start visualizing what that small business, the aunties, and what they're creating, to show their business and how what the money they're making, the revenue they're generating. And from that, then start to derive, okay, what is my formula for success? Let me just kind of simplify this. A lot of the problems is a lot of people start going down the AI route, and they feel like that they have to figure out problems, or they have to figure out, what's not working. What I normally try to tell little small businesses is find the success that is working for you now. What is that formula? Go out and try to get some interns to come in to be able to kind of show that to you in a visual way. Once you know what always succeeds for you, now start building out, okay, now I want to start collecting categories and data around those successes, what products I'm selling, what things are working really well, and then expand it. The goal is that you're bringing in interns for a couple of months or whatever, just to get some experience. Then hopefully what they're doing is they're going to start generating revenue so you can start acting like a big player. But don't start doing this to try to figure out problems. A lot of companies, even big ones, have no idea what their success rate is. They have no idea what keeps the power on or pays the bills. Show that, visualize that, then start creating categories around those things, and then start amplifying those. And I'm big on students getting an experience to try to work. So I get it, go out for the big consulting companies to kind of come in and do some work. But I promise you have lots of people that are out there that are just about to graduate who want to try to do this, and just let them show you what makes you successful, and then amplify that.
Thank you. How about you, Kevin? I'm curious to know your angle on this as well.
Yeah, I think taxonomy. I believe that it's something that we need to adapt to. It makes it easier for us, for the brands. Especially if like what Kendrick said, if you have like looking at 1,000, 3,000 SKUs. This is something that even though you're big or small, this is something that you should do, because again, with the increasing trend of demand for better shopping experience. This is something that whether you're big or small, taxonomy is something that brands can do. Just to show you an example, no matter how big you are, definitely you'll not become like obsolete from like from like leading the market share right now to eventually becoming very like 100% obsolete, or like your company close by a year or so. No, it's not going to be like that. But you're gonna make your brand become vulnerable, especially to small players, because barriers right now are very, very small. I mean, everyone's going to business, like as we can see, no, in Facebook. I mean, everyone's doing the live selling and online selling or what. So I mean, to differentiate yourself, you really have to be to really add value to your customers. I mean, and Taxonomy would help you do that. And just to also cite a specific example, I mean, you always see this in social media, right? I mean, they're telling that Netflix didn't kill the blockbusters, but it's the high cost or inconvenience of really of watching blockbuster or even buying a CDs, right? I mean, you buy one CD, it costs you like $40, but you have a Netflix subscription which costs you like what, $10 to $20, and you get to watch a lot of movies. I mean, it's really the convenience. I mean, like, Uber versus taxi, Airbnb versus hotel. So I mean, we see it. I mean, throughout the years that it's really convenience which is going to drive the business. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think that was a really good case example actually on why taxonomy could be very, very big for even small businesses, given the fact that innovation is not something that is meant for certain people, but for everyone, right? But on the idea of innovation, Kevin, we see that taxonomy is constantly being innovated, and with innovation comes change. So something is about to change. Since you come from a background of merchandiser, for buyers, merchandisers, and other related roles, right? How do you think their roles will shift or develop in the next few years?
Yeah, I think as a merchandiser myself, I mean, at least from our side, from my experience, I mean, there's still a lot of menial tasks that merchandisers do. I mean, you still do like manual replenishments. I mean, there may be some companies who's doing it like automated, but I think a vast majority of companies still do like the replenishments, the pullouts. I mean, it's still very manual. So I believe with taxonomy, it can help merchandisers become more strategic. It can give us provide better decisions, because again, with all the developments, with all the technology and advancement, I mean, yeah, I mean, a data-driven taxonomy can help merchandisers to like monitor discounts better, monitor replenishments better, which makes them which gives them more time to really strategize, think of like to really deep dive on SKUs, right? So yeah, I think in terms of dynamics, I mean, merchandisers would be, I think, would be more would provide it would give merchandisers more time to be more creative, rather than, you know, looking at a lot of spreadsheets, looking at your numbers, looking at your OTBs and everything. I mean, with AI helping you generating and crunching those numbers for you, merchandisers can be more creative and become more adaptive as we go along.
That's brilliant. I think in any other case, if we can make the role a lot easier, that would be a huge surplus, given that a lot of these roles actually deal with a lot of data. So having something that's essentially helping them out would definitely do a lot of good. So maybe as an extension of that question, and this is directed towards Kendrick, how then do you see the development of advanced taxonomy systems innovate and perhaps even change the way the fashion industry operates?
I think this one goes towards standardization. It's not a very interesting thing, but it's something that is required within the industry. So every brand, right, has its own different definition and own different taxonomies, which makes it very complex for a user to find a product. Now the complexity around these taxonomies is not useful for the industry. So there are some industries whereby the differentiation within the classifications is useful, and other industries where it's not, because it's simply a reclassification of the existing products by different companies, right? So let's say that we have 10 different organizations, and 10 organizations classifies their products slightly differently from each other, which is actually a very common thing we see today. The challenge here goes back towards the consumer. It's not really again on the brand itself. And the brand itself, of course, level classifications helps the bottom line by deciding the budgets. But I think on Kevin's point is about the convenience aspect of things. I want to find a certain item. I want to find the item that I want to search for. And when Ruth mentioned during her talk, right, that she couldn't find the item because the results that was returned was such an aggregation of random products or 1,300 different products that it just turned her off from looking for finding the exact product she wanted. That is the key problem that we are facing today. We can't even find the product we were searching for, which means that the convenience is not there. I mean, when we go into a retail store, right, we can tell the people who's helping us over there saying, hey, we're looking for this kind of dress or this kind of top or this kind of bottoms. And can you help? Is there anything like this in stock today? How they're going to respond to us is that, yes, there is something like that in stock today, or there isn't anything like that in stock today. They're not going to ask us to like reclassify everything based upon our requirements over there because they can roughly understand our thought process already. Which then goes to the Gary's point, which is that how do we make it a bit more emotional? How do we make the student a bit more able to understand our thoughts behind it, right? So anyway, in a very long story short, the way for us to get the way forward for taxonomies is a standardization within the language that we utilize within different organizations that will support the consumer buying experience because we're able to find what they want the moment they're looking for it.
Wow, that's absolutely phenomenal. I'm actually curious to know certain angles as well that Gary and Kevin would take on this. Maybe Gary, you want to give your input on this?
Yeah, one of the things that I loved about what Kendrick was talking about, standardization. And let's just talk about street sizes. Let's just get, when someone's searching for a product that they like and just trying to make sure that there's a piece of clothing or a garment that will fit them. Sometimes when you go from country to country, and there's different body sizes and types, that becomes a big issue. And the one, for example, I'm just being personal here. I go to GU 2000 because it fits my size. I'm a shorter person. So I've gone to other websites, but they get me. There's a standardization there that I feel like that they have my body type. And so as we start being able to put these systems on our e-commerce sites and making sure that they have a point of reference. So for example, when they say street size or you're looking for your sizes, you can give some, again, to create that emotional connection, you can give them kind of a sizing chart. If you buy something from here, it will fit you like this. Yes, standardization on the back end is important, but standardization to the front end is also important. Letting the consumers know, and just categories. When we say this, we mean this. I think that's very important. There needs to be definitions. One thing that I also think is very, very important for people who are just trying to get into this is redefining the word taxonomy. In English, taxonomy automatically has the word tax. And instantly people are just turned off, right? They're just very like, what? No, you said the word tax, I'm out. So I normally try to tell people taxonomy is really a pointer to purchase. That's really what you're doing. You're shooting a gun to try to get to hit target. And so the more you actually redefine, get laser focused, you're creating more pointers to the purchase. And if you explain it in that way and start to standardize around, okay, here's our targets, here's where we're trying to hit. We want these categories that we're kind of building out with taxonomy to get us towards this direction. Then you start to understand, oh, okay, it's a pointers towards purchase. Let's get that more and more refined. And then all the other things will kind of come along, as what he was talking about from the standardization.
Awesome. I think, wow, that's a lot to take in actually. But how about you, Kevin? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I think both Kendrick and Gary mentioned about standardization. I can share. I have the same experience. For me, I think it's fanny pack. When you're looking for a fanny pack, it's not called fanny pack across all. Sometimes it's called like waist pack, small pack. There's a lot of terms. A decade ago, maybe fanny pack was not even a term, right? I think that's something that was just like 3 years ago. But in terms of standardization, just to share, our company did a similar strategy. Before, we handled a lot of our brand.coms and marketplaces. So what we did was we did a little bit of a research of how these industry-leading platforms, like Zalora, Shopee, Lazada, and everything. We look at how they categorize their products, and we notice a lot of interesting things. Like, for example, on our side, I mean, we categorize casual shoes or sneakers like lifestyle shoes. Right? I mean, if right now, of course, I myself, I know what lifestyle shoes means, but of course, if I tell it to anyone, there's a lot of definition on lifestyle shoes. They might think it's loafers, they might think it's sneakers. So, but apparently, when we found out, industry leaders just label it as sneakers or shoes or footwear, right? So sometimes this is I think there's no one size fits all, definitely. But I think standardization is something that companies can consider. I mean, again, merchandisers, bottom line, I mean, merchandisers do not need to reinvent new names. I mean, it all boils down to first really understanding how does your customers define your product, right? You do not need to really reinvent a new term like lifestyle shoes, you know, to sound sexy or what, right? I mean, you don't need to really innovate another new term. I mean, you just have to understand how does your customer search for your products and how do they call your product. So yeah, I think the standardization is also something that number one, back end. I mean, it would also help merchandisers. I mean, especially in online, it's not like offline that you can just allocate your stocks. I mean, just deliver your stocks in store, then finish. In online, you have to categorize, describe, provide images. So it kind of helps us also lessen the turnaround time of uploading our products online. So I think that's one of the big quick wins of standardization of the categories. And number two, I think our products had better visibility and searchability. So again, again, convenience. So with better searchability, you make your product more, you make your brand to be more convenient to your customers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm actually going to move on to the last question on my end before we move on to the Q&As, because I do have some questions from the audience. So the last question is actually towards Gary. Gary, when we innovate the industry using taxonomy and AI, what will happen to brands that don't use it? Will they be rendered obsolete? And then are we going to see displacement within the community and perhaps even exclusion of smaller brands?
Well, I mean, one thing I did want to bring up too, as we're moving into that question, is what Kevin was talking about: creativity. You know, being able to match your marketing, your data science teams together. I think there was a term. One of the things that I'm working on right now is with a fashion OTT channel, and what they're doing that's a little different is instead of and this is so you have your normal, you know, streaming channels that are based, you know, across Asia and, you know, Netflixes and those type of things. But this fashion channel wants to start selling product. And so you have your traditional that allows you to be able to search for content from a taxonomy perspective. They want to make it so not only you searching for content, but the content also becomes showcases for the product. So what they're doing is they're creating their own slang. So they're creating their own terms instead of waiting to be able to kind of break up the terms and just work overtime to be able to figure out what terms, pointers to purchase. They're creating a vernacular, they're creating content, they're creating people, that actors and some of the models to say certain terms, not just on their shows, around fashion, but they're also saying it on their social media. So what does that mean? They're actually creating the taxonomy that appeals to a certain audience, a younger audience. So they dominate the taxonomy. So when they do searches on other websites, those terms, and what was some of the, and I'll tell you, for example, one of them is for NFT fashion. So a lot of the fashion brands are creating clothes that are linked to NFTs, which is blockchain. So they're using this new technology that uses, you know, RFIDs and NFCs, and I mean, all these little acronyms to connect to something that is unique, that no one else can buy this product, or it's been created by a musician such as, you know, Sean Combs or P. Diddy. So one thing that I wanted to bring out there is for those people that there's three types of kind of customers. Those are like, oh, should I get into this and even try to categorize all the stuff that's coming at me? The second one is says, look, I am going to create category and taxonomies around all of the things I have to, because I have to do that. And so you're just basically digested in everything that's been kind of directed towards you. Or the third, which is, I think is very important what this fashion channel is doing, they're creating the language with their content on their website to dominate taxonomy. So what's funny is they'll go to other websites looking for these slang terms, but they won't have them. So they're like, oh, the only website I know is that fashion channel that I went to. So that's something to think about, in the sense that, will the older ones fall away? You know, here's a great time if you are a mom and pop or like an aunties or whatever, creating a fashion brand or be able to sell product, being able to look at these fashion content shows, be able to speak the language and only use those slang words to direct them, especially when it comes to this new trend of using very unique fashion uniquely made for me, NFT fashion. So I definitely think that there's a way that if you haven't got into using taxonomies, this is a perfect example. Create the language, get them to embrace your brand. But that means, most importantly, get in your marketing team. And it's been said by Kendrick, it's been said by Kevin, it's been said by all your speakers. Have your marketing team and your data science team start to work together. Because without that, creating that strong connection around the language, the vernacular, or the taxonomies, that's key. And that actually allows you to dominate dominate the market. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, but I did kind of go in a kind of a future vision scenario there.
It's cool. I think that the tip was really interesting, as well as the case you used, right? Because that's an approach I've never heard of before. And in a way, it's psychologically just convincing people to opt into a certain type of taxonomy. That's great. Let's actually move on to the list of questions we have from the audience. So the first one is addressed for Kendrick. So Kendrick, let's assume that all brands in the fashion industries use taxonomy to categorize their products. We still don't know whether all of the brands will share the same language for the taxonomy. Does this mean that taxonomy will only be useful for internal analysis only, not externally?
Yeah, so there are two ways to look at this. The first way is that taxonomies, regardless of how other brands utilize it, doesn't mean that we're not able to do a comparison against another brand. The reason why is because if we can classify our products, right, let's say using image recognition or text learning, we can also classify our competitors' products. What this means is that our products now has a certain classification, and our competitors' products have the same classification as well. So we're able to utilize this externally and not just internally. The function of taxonomy is just a classification, or as how Gary pointed out, is a point and shoot. So you meant to just find the products that you're looking for. So again, when you're looking into a comparison, right, externally, we just have to classify the products of our competitors the same way we classify the products of our own. That allows us to do the comparisons externally and not just internally.
Awesome.
So we don't have to wait until every brand utilizes the same taxonomies, which is most likely it will be I think a few decades to happen. We're able to create synonyms already for our own taxonomies against a competitor, or simply just reclassifying the competitor's taxonomies to our own.
Yeah, I think that's really useful information, because at surface level, it can be seen that that taxonomy can only be used to a certain extent, right? But that's a great clarification. The next question is directed towards Kevin. So Kevin, this person asked, do you really see and believe that taxonomy will be the golden standard in the future for doing any analysis and decision-making within the fashion industry?
Yes, I believe that it would be one of the gold standards in the future. I mean, we already see it right now. Like for example, as a merchandiser, we don't analyze a one-size-fits-all strategy for all brands. I mean, for example, if I handle a footwear brand, we don't just look at it. All right, we're going to give 50% off on all the SKUs of this footwear. I mean, we look at it on a per category level, closed toes, open toes. I mean, we're already starting to do it right now. I mean, right? I mean, we discount based on aging, based on the relevance of the category. So I think it would really be one of the standards in analysis. I mean, pricing, discount, and everything. And again, going back, I mean, the convenience and the rise of e-commerce, it makes taxonomy even more important because I mean customers search for your products via tag, via images. So all this integration is even much more important right now. And actually, we're getting already a glimpse of what it's going to be like.
Yeah, I think that the answer was pretty clear as well, right? Given the fact how much is developed, it's very foreseeable. The next one is actually for Gary. And Gary, this one's quite an interesting and philosophical one, which is that artificial intelligence has widely been used across different industries. Do you think that AI will replace the traditional workforce and likewise humans? Because if it does, I think there'll be a lot of rejection from the traditional workforce to whole progress of AI. To that extent, what is the end game of AI in all these different industries?
It can be said in 2 words: goodbye repeats. What I mean by that is goodbye repetition. The whole goal of artificial intelligence is getting rid of repetition and being more creative. I know everyone says it, but it's totally true. So if you're afraid, if you do have jobs, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of jobs that repetition is what you get paid to do. And yes, those jobs will probably go away because they're obsolete. They're wasting time to be creative. They're wasting time to generate revenue. So those will go, but there'll be certain things that won't be replaced. For example, I was part of the Esquire Singapore April 2019 issue where we actually wrote half the magazine using artificial intelligence and wrote the other half of the magazine with humans. And when we started the process, the chief editor, which is Norman Tan, he was really worried, like, well, am I about to put myself out of a job? And the answer is no, because one of the things that we found out is once you use AI to create something, and it can create, it's somewhat creative, there's no connection with a human being. So for example, when the magazine came out and people started reading it, we had actually a contest that if you could predict or you could see which article was written by artificial intelligence and which article was written by a human, you won a trip to the Maldives. I mean, come on, that's a great contest, right? I mean, you would think, oh, I'm going to be able to read these articles and tell right away. But people couldn't. I don't even think anybody won the Maldives. I wanted to win it myself. But anyway, I couldn't do that. So, but then when we told them which articles was written by AI, they instantly pulled back. You know why they pulled back? Once they realized that AI had done it, they realized, oh, there's no shared experience. So I think what's really important to note is, and again, from a psychological perspective, and I call it the psychology of analytics, AI helps you when you want that shared experience with, some kind of technology. For example, predicting a political election or predicting stocks, or there's another tool that we created called People Like You, where you log into a bank and AI shows you what people like you anonymously are doing and investing. Those things are really, really important. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that I have AI to kind of tell me those things. But if I'm trying to take over your job or tell stories or, be creative, there's no shared experience. So I think that creatives do not have to worry. Let me also put it out there for this too. Ad agencies and marketing teams, they do talk about AI quite a lot, but then they pull back because they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. No, getting rid of a lot of this repetitious work and allowing them to be more creative so if you're afraid of being more creative, yes, AI is going to be an issue for you. But if you're very open to kind of embracing, okay, I'm going to let this go on autopilot because I don't need to do this anymore. And now I want to work on this really cool marketing campaign, or I really want to focus on my brand and create a fashion that no one has ever seen before, then you're going to excel and AI is going to be perfect. Again, artificial intelligence requires emotional intelligence. So hopefully that answers the question in a roundabout way.
Thank you. I really think it did. To be honest, it was very extensive. So definitely we'll gather some level of insight from that. So we actually have one last question before we proceed to the closing of the Fashion Summit 2021. And the last one is directed to Kevin. Kevin, How long have you been applying taxonomy on your day-to-day activities as a merchandiser? Do the pros of using taxonomy really defeat the hassle and the cost that brands need to allocate for it?
So we have been honestly we haven't really applied the deep taxonomy, the detailed ones, but we have applied the basic technology as the basic taxonomy as mentioned earlier. We standardize our categories based on platform leaders. We look at how they define their products, how they categorize their products. So I think we started doing taxonomy. I mean, to be honest, because of the pandemic, it accelerated the e-commerce growth. So it's not something that is what we call the optional thing. It made it a necessity for us to really adapt. So we have been doing it a little over a year already. I mean, we categorize products based on how it is categorized by platform leaders. So I think to answer your question, does the pros of using taxonomy outweighs the cons? I believe it does. I mean, again, going back, I mean, I'm speaking on e-commerce specific. I mean, everyone is doing the same thing in e-commerce, right? You always see discounts, you always see vouchers, free shipping, and all. No? And the only way to really differentiate your product is to provide customer added value and branding. And to add value to your customer, I mean, you really have to, again, my favorite word, convenience. You really have to provide convenience and add value to them by providing good quality products. So yeah, I think it really outweighs the pros. I mean, I think the cons of doing a data-driven taxonomy or using taxonomy is, number one, it's very tedious. At start, I mean, in the start, no, in the beginning, I mean, tagging each and every products. And then if you're gonna do an automated taxonomy, you're gonna do AI. It's costly, right? I mean, the cost is, I mean, it's not cheap. It's not for everyone, right? It's not a one-time thing. It's not something that all companies can afford as of this moment. So, I mean, but if you come to think of it long-term, it's something that the customers are demanding, convenience. So, I mean, it's not like that. It's not something that you can really compute right off the bat. Like if you spend X amount in taxonomy, it's going to give you like an X amount of uplift in sales. No, it's not going to be like that. It's something that, I mean, given the trend in the transformation in the digital age, I think this is something that all companies should do so that they would not lose the market share in the market. Yeah.
That is excellent advice in terms of using taxonomy. Thank you so much, Kevin. All right, and that marks the end of the Omnilytics Fashion Summit 2021. We hope that you've learned a lot during all these different sessions. We did have quite a sum that covered various topics, and I hope that at least one of them will be beneficial to you.